to the show, Jake. Thanks for jumping on and having a wee chat with us tonight.
Yeah, not at all. Thank you for having us on.
So it's been a busy old week this week. Obviously, there's been a lot. The media's been pretty active this week after obviously Khabib and Justin fought. Just quickly wanted to touch on that fight, and I kind of wanted to get your thoughts on it, James, in terms of when Khabib got Justin to the ground. First of all, how would you rate if you were to put a belt on Justin's ground game? What belt would you be What belt would you be sticking on him in terms of just jiu-jitsu?
I've been going back and forth with some jiu-jitsu guys this week about this, where they're criticising them and getting on about the white belt level defence and stuff like that. And I think we don't take into account there is the first round, the pressure he's put on him for that first round. Mentally, Justin's whole thing was to stay off the fence. If I stay off the fence, I'll beat him. If I land, I think he was looking for 6 to 8 leg kicks. If I land these, it will slow him down and he'll be able to pressure me. And if you watch the fight, before you know it, he's on the fence. Like Khabib's got him on the fence. So straight away, when you start preparing for fights like that, like I can't let him put me on the fence and stuff. Before you know it, you're on the fence. It's like these golfers when they're playing and there's bunkers and they're thinking, don't put it in the bunker, don't put it in the bunker. They're 9 out of 10 times you're going to fire it right into the bunker. So he's been through that pressure. He's scrambled. He's probably hit Khabib. He's hit him with some fantastic shots. Left hook twice over the top with the right hand, and a couple solid leg kicks, and the guy's still coming at him. And I think when he's felt that weight on top of him as well, he's famous for getting back to his feet. Justin Gaethje's his scrambling ability was his main thing as a wrestler. And he never managed to get a sniff at getting back up. So he's just broke there. But if you look at it, he defended the arm triangle and stuff like that. A mounted triangle is not the most common submission in MMA. So there's a chance the dude's maybe not even seen it before, but he did come up and on top, and then Khabib kind of went between the armbar and the triangle. But I know black belts in jiu-jitsu and stuff like that. If you tell them just to roll, it's a different game. If you put them in an actual fight and then you've got him hitting you, he's on top, he's trapping your wrist, he's taking you down, he's causing it to scramble, and Gaethje's getting more tired and frustrated, and his technique's getting wilder. And your technique goes to shit. It's that old. It doesn't matter if he's a black belt in jiu-jitsu. Khabib's tapped black belts in jiu-jitsu before. He's dominated them on the ground and stuff. So these guys getting criticising his defence and stuff there's a high chance that's probably a technique he's not seen coming from Mount before. I bet you 100% knows what a triangle is. He's been taught that for day one, crossing over MMA, so he's not putting cell in them for when he's in top guard and stuff. But he's willing everyone else get beat out of him, and to the point where he was getting frustrated, and then obviously he went to tapping and went to sleep. But
yeah,
he'll be back, man. I think he's not psychologically broke, but when your plan is and your focus is not to let something happen, and before you know it's happening, everyone else goes to shit really quick in a fight.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it just shows, just again, how good Khabib is, and the infamous dog's back on the podcast. Jake, for you, what I kind of want your opinion on, obviously, how you thought Justin actually looked. Do you think he looked like the Justin we've seen in the past? And for example, the Tony fight, did you see nerves in him? Did you see anything different? How did you think he looked initially?
I think going into a fight, anybody, especially against Khabib, anybody's going to have more nerves on them than sort of what you would in anything else. But I think there was a lot of factors going into that. Even having his parents in the crowd, I know it's only a small factor, but they're one of a couple of hundred people possibly in the stadium. That's a little bit added pressure. Knowing his parents are there, knowing his parents are in the actual stadium. I don't think Gaethje come out with the confidence he had in that Ferguson fight. I think it was a lot more tentative, but of course, a lot of that can be down to if his game plan's going to be throwing these leg kicks. You know, once Khabib's got your time, he's going to grab that leg, he's going to get on the single, he's going to take it down.
Yeah. And I guess, obviously, the fight went, I mean, a lot of people were, but this is what happens with champions. The next contender's always the one that might have the answer. Turns out Justin didn't have the answer to Khabib, and obviously nobody has yet. Khabib then retired. It was quite an emotional thing after the fight, which is now, I don't know what you think. I kind of look at the lightweight division. I thought, as great as Khabib is, and it is a bit sad to see him go so soon when he's obviously got so much more to offer the sport. Is there a level of excitement in that lightweight division now? That, because looking at the division with Khabib in it, it didn't look like there was anyone there to beat him. Now Khabib stepped away. What do you think? Do you think there's a bit of excitement around that division again now? A bit of buzz?
I think it opens all back up there, man. That division's always been, for a while, it's been the best division in the sport. I think the weird thing is, and there's these GOAT arguments and stuff all weekend. Khabib's only been the champion for 2 years. I think he's only had 3 or 4 defences, so it's not like the way it was when Anderson Silva defended 13 or 14 times, or Mighty Mouse had that long run and stuff like that. There's still guys there that could maybe cause him problems and stuff. It'd have been better if he, as a fan, it would have been better if he went through everybody in the top 10. Just there's so many different styles and stuff to deal with there. And he could have still possibly walked away undefeated and stuff, but I'm always happy watching guys leave on their own terms. We've spoken about this before. Like, if he's made enough money, he's still healthy, he's still cognitively healthy, he can just walk away and live the rest of his life now. Instead of being one of these guys, like we've got Anderson Silva fighting this weekend, going to retire, and he's lost something like 6 out of his last 8 or something. I can't remember the numbers, but it's sad watching him hang about for too long. So when you get a guy who does walk away on top and commits to it, then that's a thing that needs to be celebrated, I think. So it opens the division up, and even with him away, it's exciting and stuff to see is that the guys that have left in the top 10 who are going to be trying to line up for that title now, there's going to be some great fights.
Yeah, it's, I mean, like you were mentioning with Anderson Silva, there's going to be quite a few MMA fans who've maybe came to the sport in the last few years, and unless they've looked back on fights, their image of Anderson Silva's is not going to be a great one. Hanging about, almost, do you feel it almost tarnishes your legacy a bit?
Yeah. Because that's what people remember, is that the MMA fans are fickle. They only remember your last fight. And then you've seen it, like, as soon as a fight's done, they just want to know about the next one as well. It's like they've got short-term memory with them. But there's guys who never seen Anderson Silva in his prime. And just like in a couple of years' time, there'll be guys who never seen Khabib, or who reckon that whoever's the champion at the time would have wiped the floor with him and stuff. But when he walks out like that, there's an argument for this guy would never have beat him in 20 years' time or whatever, because he was undefeated and stuff. Whereas with Anderson now, it's just like, it's almost like he's just turning up to get paid now. It's sad. Yeah.
And for you, Jake, in terms of sort of the landscape of the lightweight division now, how do you feel about that in terms of, are you quite excited with how the division looks at the moment? Obviously, I know we've lost potentially one of the greatest fighters we've ever seen in the octagon, but that being said, how do you think of the landscape of the division?
I think it opens the division right up, but I also believe that any of them top 8 could beat each other on any given night, which I think is great for the sort of interest, especially from your more sort of casual fans. I think it's great for the interest in that you could see a new champ crowned every 2-3 fights almost, and it is going to build that. What I would really like, what I'd like to see to try and draw even more eyes in, and I mean, Bellator showing you perfectly how not to do it, would be a tournament style, where you can take the top 8, put them in a tournament, try and get through it quicker than 2.5 years, and really build around that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that would be just the UFC. Just don't seem to want to. I don't know what do you think it is with tournaments in the UFC? Why do you think they're so put off by it? I don't understand it. I feel it's. I mean, James, you obviously do you like the tournament format?
I do actually. We've coached a bunch of guys. Most notably Stevie Ray at Cage Warriors won his world title with 2 fights on the one night. Graham Turner done it a couple of times. Martin Delaney done it, but I like it, and I know the fighters like it as well. Like you do the 3 months camp, and you get 1 fight. You take a week off. You can realistically fit in about 4 fights a year that way. Whereas with Graham Turner, when he was fighting pro, he'd done a couple of these tournaments, so he ended up. He wasn't even pro for 10 years, but he had 36 fights. He was just busy getting 2 fights a night and stuff, and it just brings something a wee bit different to the sport. Whether they do it an 8-man tournament on the night, or even just do it similar to the PFL over the space of a year.
Yeah,
like you could have them all fight on the first night, draw the brackets and stuff, and people always come back to watch it. I think, especially in that division with the talent they've got there, and you've seen them at the weekend there, the Chandlers making weight and standing by in case somebody pulled it. They could easily have alternates and stuff like that. You could have at that way you could have a top 16 division. Like what Jake was saying, anybody could win it depending on how you match them and stuff, just because of the talent and stuff. But it's freshening stuff up a wee bit. I think they're still running Dana White's Contender thing every week, and it's piss poor. They're talking about another season of The Ultimate Fighter, and it's not been good in about fucking 10 years. So they could just inject a new kind of format into it, and it would be excellent, I think.
Yeah, I imagine that, Jake. Even if they go crazy and do even if it was a 60, like James saying, a 16-man tournament, you imagine they just stack the card, just lightweights, put a main card on with Conor McGregor, Michael Chandler, Tony Ferguson. I mean, that's a card to tune into, right? That's a card worth staying up for.
It absolutely is, but that Conor McGregor factor could well be the reason why they're trying to sort of stay away from a tournament, especially in this division. Conor is the UFC's cash cow. If Conor goes out first round to, let's say, Cowboy Oliveira, he gets beat and that's him done for the tournament. In terms of revenue, in terms of interest from them casual fans, I think the UFC would lose a lot by risking putting Conor in a tournament format.
The other side of that is, the other thing is that I guess the worry with Conor is the activity level. So if you put Conor into the tournament format, and you don't do it over obviously one show, but you do it over a period of shows, if you're banking on Conor doing well and eventually getting to the title, how many fights do you get out of Conor? How many big cards, big paydays? So there's always there's 2 sides, isn't there? I mean, as a fan and just somebody that loves the sport, I mean that's the way you want them to go, right?
Yeah, it is.
And so we'll see how it all plays out, I guess. And in terms of UK MMA, the other news that sort of broke is Mr. I Will Smash You. Chimaev now fights Leon Edwards. Do we think they've done Leon a bit dirty, Jake? What do you think, pulling him out the rankings?
I mean, Leon's been bullied into the fight, and I don't really think there's any other sort of way to look at this. Granted, his inactivity was always going to cost him somewhere down the line, but
yeah,
in terms of a lose-lose, he couldn't have been matched, personally, I don't think, much worse than against Chimaev.
Yeah.
If Leon beats Chimaev, it's a case of, oh, well, he should have beaten him. He's been third in the world for however long, and he won't get the marketing in the UFC push the way they've pushed Khamzat. If he gets beat, that's Leon way back now down the rankings. Chimaev leapfrogging a lot of people in that division, and really leaves Leon in an awkward position.
Yeah. I guess the other thing with it is, though, is if you look at the welterweight division, let's just look at the champ Usman for a minute. He doesn't draw massive eyeballs. He's not. I don't know why it is. He doesn't seem to. The MMA fans haven't seemed to taken to him. If we're just removing the belt out of this hypothetical for a second, what fight do you think more fans will tune in for? Usman or Khamzat? I'll put that to any. What do you think?
Just now, I can tell just by how people talk in the gym, like how. And even in kind of fighters group chats stuff, everybody wants to see that guy fight. It's very reminiscent of when Conor came through and he was busy, like he was fighting every couple of months and he was starching everybody. The UFC's kind of copied that model again, even to the level where it's like they've gradually just built up the level of competition, and now they're trying to take a jump, and it's I don't know if they see something in Leon they think can get him into the top 5 rankings, and it might not be as tricky a fight as putting him with Covington or Gilbert Burns or maybe even Stephen Thompson or something. I think they maybe the company fancies his chances against Leon Edwards, and then obviously they're saying that Leon's turned fights down and stuff like that, so they're always pretty quick to put these guys in their place if they don't toe the line with them. They're notorious for it. So everybody wants to watch that guy now, but there's for the young guys in our gym to the right through to the pro fighters, they're all like, I can't wait to see him again. I can't wait to see him again and stuff. And he's building up a bit of a massive kind of follow on now. I think that's him just hit 1 million followers on his Instagram or something. He's went for some ridiculous 15,000 to 1 million, and he's now been in the UFC 5 months yet, I think.
And the weird thing is with the guy, it's not like he's this big speaker like Conor McGregor. He literally says, "I'll smash you." That's it, and it's worked for him. But he does smash guys. But James, just for putting your coach's hat on here, when you look at the guys Khamzat's fought, I mean, this is a big jump in levels, right? Going for the guys he's fought to Leon Edwards. Leon Edwards is fucking good, man. That is an acid test, if nothing else, and potentially one he might fail.
It's a proper fight. Leon's underrated, I think. I do feel bad for him because I'm like an 8-fight winning streak or something. Now he walks that tightrope now where if he fucks up against this guy, he's probably never going to get anywhere near the title again. But Leon, it's a 50-50 fight for me. I think Leon's, the thing about him is he's so smart. Like he's not the same 2 fights in a row. His IQ is excellent. I don't think Leon will be scared of him anywhere. I think he's been in there with Usman before. He's been on the map with Gunnar Nelson. He's fought with strikers and stuff. So I think it'll be a proper good fight, man. The inactivity worries me. Like the time out, I think, with how active the other guy's been could be a factor. But I'd imagine Leon's going there and he's wanting to prove a point. Like I think Kim and his brother Fabian are like that. If they get a chip on their shoulder, they're going to take it out on Sunday. It's a good thing sometimes. And I think he'll want to get in there, and it'll be like similar to. He knows that guy's the flavour of the month for the UFC. You've seen it at the weekend when who jumped out the cage? Jimmy Crute jumped out the cage to go up to Dana, and Khamzat sitting next to Dana White, like just the two of them sitting, and you're like, oh, that's Conor McGregor's seat. Like so, this guy's he's flavour of the month now with Dana. So Leon will be like, I'll fucking show you. I'll give me your boy, like same way Khabib was type of thing. But it's a risky fight. I've done the dirty on Leon a wee bit, but you're definitely going to watch it.
100%. And I mean, just like James is saying here, that adds to the fight though, doesn't it? That Leon getting in there and maybe looking at Khamzat and thinking, you don't deserve to be where you are. That's my spot. That you're taking, as Nate Diaz said, you're taking everything I've worked for.
Yeah, it absolutely plays a massive factor in this one. Leon is going to feel like he's got to go in there and he's got something to prove. 80% of the eyeballs that are going to be on that fight are going to be going, who's Leon Edwards? And that really is sort of the way I think this is going to end up, because Khamzat came in and like he's drawn, like James was saying before, he's drawn that crowd. It's like that Conor McGregor effect. I know you were saying before about him not speaking much English and just saying, I'll smash everyone. But it was like Conor and that Mystic Mac. You didn't have to say much, but say the right thing and follow through, and you will get that massive fan base behind you.
Yeah, 100%. And it's an exciting fight, and I guess we need to move on from exciting fights to, let's talk about Bellator Europe. I think the only 3 words I've got is, what the fuck? What the fuck is happening? What have they done? How? I mean, it's ridiculous. So they're obviously they're they've come out today, and there's been an article released in MMA Junkie saying that they've parted ways with 30 fighters. So obviously, as we were speaking off camera, we were messaging back and forth, Jake. That might be retirements. Obviously, like Lovato Jr. Is retired, Fitch is retired. They've parted ways with Roy Nelson, Frank Mir, and this European series you've done. You've said to me, Jake, it could have went one of two ways. Unfortunately, it kind of only went one way, and that was straight down the shitter, man. What went wrong apart from, well, I guess we could list what went wrong. Fucking the way they lined up their TV deals, you needed to be a mathematician to work out what to do and where to go and matchups. And Jake, you tell us what happened.
Look, I mean, the broadcasting deals in themselves were always going to be an issue. I mean, we had the Sky Sports at Channel 5. Now we've got BBC iPlayer, but then you've also got the YouTube free for the early prelims. It was always going to be a bit of a mess. But from the start, like I was saying to you off camera, it was going to go one of two ways. It was either really going to be able to build these European lads on a stage, these fighters who didn't want to go the Cage Warriors route, wanted to go for something different. And that opportunity was there. But even down to, I remember the first night it was in Newcastle. So, of course, I was covering the event. And there was a real strange sort of feeling in the arena of, because at the time, Aaron Chalmers was still relatively new in the sport. That was why a lot of the eyes were there. There was no atmosphere. There was nothing really that, for me, I thought, oh, this is great. We're onto something really big here. Look at Dublin, incredible. That Dublin crowd will sell out the arena. You put James on the card, you put Kiefer on the card, it's going to sell out. London, MVP said it himself after he beat Rich Kiley that he didn't feel that the London crowd got anywhere near behind him the way that the Dublin crowd got behind them Irish fighters. Now, arguably the face of UK Bellator, being, of course, MVP, is saying that about the crowd in his home city. You know you're going to have a massive issue. In a funny way, feel that 2020 and this whole COVID thing was a blessing in disguise for the way that Bellator Europe is heading towards the end of 2020. Dave Green had come out and said he wanted to do, I believe it was between 6 and 8 or 8 and 10 shows through 2020. By the time the lockdown hit, they'd only had one event and they only had one more booked in, which wasn't going to be till May that year. So unless they were going to do a show every month for the rest of this year, they were sort of up shit creek anyway.
Yeah, I remember. Obviously, we sat next to each other at the Newcastle card, and you're right. It was kind of weird, man. It was just, but it was weird. But I was a bit excited about it. I thought there's a real opportunity here. There's an opportunity to give the European fans something. Give us potentially put something together where the European fighters. Not everybody's got to go to the UFC, of course. We know that, and give them an opportunity to get on a promotion, earn some money. Let us see some fights at a good time, and it just didn't work out. And I guess, I mean, if you look back in some of their matches, I mean, they gave us Hoyce and Ken Shamrock, and the two of them were about 75 each or something. You know what I mean? A collective age of 150. So I don't know what I mean, it's just that the gutting thing is it's removed some opportunity for fighters based in Europe. It feels like. And James, when you saw how Bellator were putting things together, could you kind of tell that this was just going to be a disaster? Because you probably know. I certainly speak to people, and people don't know about Bellator, and they only focus on the UFC. So it's only really hardcore fans that will watch Bellator, or if your brother maybe fights in it.
I before the European series, I only watched it if certain guys were fighting. Like Chandler or Pitbull and stuff like that. I would never watch the whole show. I'd just go and look for certain guys. But mind when I come on after I came back to Bellator with Callum had won. And I mind saying on the podcast, it's the setup and the production and stuff was nothing like the UFC. I'd been at the UFC maybe a month before, and it was basically pretty much just Bama. It was just a Bama show with Bellator branding. And again, the matchmaking you touched on, they've always done that. They've always had weird kind of these legends fights and stuff like that. But I've actually quite enjoyed some of the European series. I preferred it to the American kind of counterpart. I don't know if it was just because we know most of these guys, like you've been on shows with them and stuff, so you're also a wee bit more invested that way. But I think what Jake touched on there, they went to Dublin early, and they've probably seen what's went on in Dublin at sell out the atmosphere and stuff like that, and they've probably thought it would be the same in Newcastle or London or Glasgow or Milan and shit. They're like, this is what these European crowds like. But the Irish scene and the fan following in Ireland is different, and it has been for a while. I fought in Cage Rage in Ireland 2006 in that arena. At the time it's called, I think it's called the Free Arena now, but at the time it's called the O2 Point or something. And there was just under 7,000 people at that night. And this was just like, there's no big names on that show. Ash Daly was on it and Owen Roddy was on it and stuff like that. But it was, I came for fighting in shows in Glasgow and stuff with 600-700 people to this 7,000 people in that arena. And even back then, the Irish just support the sport better. This was obviously pre-Conor. But they still almost sold the place out for a Cage Rage card. So I don't know if they've went to Dublin and seen that and thought this is what it's going to be like. They could put on a show in Dublin every 3 months.
By the way, James, I just need to ask you something quickly. I can hear something in the background. Is that the dog snoring?
As I.
Could you hear that, Jake?
The one there, the other one's down there. It's not me that's snoring. In fact, it's Lindsay that's snoring. Sorry, I had to say that there. I could hear it. I was wondering what it was. So do you think that's the end of Bellator's European experiment then? I don't know, because they've still got all those boys signed. I feel sorry for all those guys that get cut because they were getting paid well, and they're going to go back to Cage Warriors now for not that great money, and there's nothing really else other than Cage Warriors in the UK now. And then I know some of the guys have probably burnt bridges at Cage Warriors going to Bellator as well. Like they've maybe turned Cage Warriors down or left on bad terms and stuff. And I know the way the guys work at Cage Warriors, like they're no quick to do you favours if you have done this. But obviously there's the Scottish interest. Ross and Chris are still there, Chris Duncan. So hopefully they'll let these guys keep progressing and earn a living doing what they're supposed to do. When they sign so many European guys, I was like, it's nice that these guys are getting paid, but they should be getting paid. It might actually increase the standard of the fights and the camps and stuff in the UK, because guys can train like professional athletes, but they've just shelved so many of them. It's a shame for the guys, man, because there's not a lot of places to go now. And I don't know, they're probably going to have to go win fights before they get in position for the UFC, and then even like the Cage Warriors route to the UFC seems to be not the easiest, but it seems to be the most tried and tested one for kind of UK or European guys now.
And the thing is, there's got to be a mental aspect to that. You've got to Bellator, you're fighting a massive show in front of good sized crowds, you're getting paid well. Then you go away from Bellator, and if Cage Warriors isn't the option, can a fighter really go back onto a regional scene and start building up? That must be a big thing for a fighter to deal with, just to think, I need to go right back to the bottom, and you might have been working your way for 10 years to that point, and then to go back down there. Do you think that's potentially where some fighters will be like, you know what, I've done what I can in the sport, I'm out?
That's why Nathan Grayson retired.
Mm-hmm.
That was exactly the reason why Nathan retired. So, of course, he had the flyweight belt at Cage Warriors. The UFC looked like they were going to get rid of that flyweight division. So Nathan then, of course, didn't defend the belt. Went, fought Cal, got beat off Cal, went and fought Franz Malambo in London a few months later, got beat off Malambo, and that was him then cut from Bellator. And he openly admits that is then why he retired, because he couldn't then have went back and started again from square one and worked his way back up.
Yeah, and for you, James, obviously you're working with fighters day in, day out. I mean, that's a hard pill to swallow, right? Yeah,
it's pretty much crushing all your dreams, really. I think with some of the guys that got cut, their age is going to be a factor. Like if you're early mid-30s and stuff, coming off a couple losses, you're going to go and win 3 or 4 fights somewhere, and maybe hope that the UFC looks at you. Because if you're in your early 20s, you've got a wee bit of time. You can go away, go back to the smaller regional shows and improve your skill set, and then maybe take a chance somewhere. But it's definitely going to retire quite a lot of these guys, like especially when they're maybe used to that kind of pay, and then having to go away back to square one, fighting for maybe like a tenth of what they were getting or whatever. But it's just a nasty business, man. We've spoke to this before. It's cutthroat, and not everybody can make it to where they're trying to make it. We always talk about this in the gym, where there's maybe there's one spot for a flyweight in the UFC in the next 6 months, and there's maybe 130 flyweights in Europe or something, and they're all wanting that spot. It's like when you go for a job interview, there's 2 positions vacant and there's 800 applicants. Do you know what I mean? It's cutthroat, but it just looked like they were getting somewhere with the European thing, and then it's just went cut all the guys, which is sad, man.
What do you see Bellator doing, or what can they do just to try and right the ship and rectify it in Europe? Because I like you, I don't want this to go away personally. I'm Jake, I'm sure you're the same. I think it's a great avenue for fighters, because James, you'll know yourself dealing with guys all the time. No, everybody's going to make the UFC, and it doesn't mean they're a bad fighter not making the UFC. By any means, it does not mean that. It's like in terms of football, no everybody plays at Premier League, but there's fantastic players playing in the Championship and stuff like that. Yeah. I think you do need these other avenues for fighters. Do you see a way for Bellator to right this ship?
I would definitely fix the TV deal. I think that bouncing all over the place is shit. They maybe have to build some guys like regionally. Like MVP should be selling out shows in London with how good he is, and he's been there long enough. If it came to Scotland, when Chris and Ross and Chris Bungard, they would have sold well. Robert Whiteford as well. I'd imagine they've sold pretty well, because we've had nothing up here for years.
Right.
And I don't know if the COVID's affected them. They've just decided to pull the plug on things, and obviously not getting gates to shows has been a problem.
Yeah,
but it just seems like a weird time to cut everybody. Like, because I don't know if they've got a schedule. The UFC cut a bunch of fighters, but they cut a bunch of guys who were on high pay and replaced them with guys who were on low pay, which is that's business. They cut guys who were making 80 and 80 to turn up, and then just took a load of guys for the contender thing, putting them on 10 and 10 so they can fill cards cheaper when they've got no gates. But you wonder what Bellator's going to do. I didn't actually realise that so many fighters under contract until I seen the list of the American guys cut today, and then there was a list that we seen last week, I think, with the Europeans. So it's maybe close to 40 to 50 fighters that have been left out. But it just seems like a weird time to cut them.
Do you think as well Bellator Jake, I'll get you to jump in on this as well. Do you know sometimes Bellator's mistake is, sometimes I feel that Bellator don't look to the younger fighters. They're always going for like ex-UFC guys who they're going to have to pay probably a lot of money. Do you know how Bellator, their main focus should be young fighters and actually building those fighters? Because I think we can all agree here, they do a horrendous job of building fighters, marketing fighters. They just don't do it well. Where the UFC, that's one of their big things. They market their fighters well and their brand well. Bellator, it seems like they don't. What do you think, Jake?
I think a lot of Bellator's decision making when they look back on this European series could be questionable. Like James just mentioned there, of course, the Scottish show not happening, yet they went to Tel Aviv at the end of 2019. It's like, you've got to be questioning that. But with that the side of the show, I think absolutely they need to start looking at these younger guys, investing in these younger guys. I like Apache Mix coming up through. Mm-hmm. The European series, I could see why they went for a lot of the athletes that they did. And it's because you're coming into this, you're going to try to be bringing athletes in who you're not going to bring some sort of following with them. the likes of Jimmy Wallhead. Jimmy's been around for years. Jimmy's built up on this scene. But the worry is, if they did bring in a load of these younger fighters, up-and-coming prospects, and they don't build them, that's like the prime of these young lads and lasses' career, them first few years where they're putting together these really impressive wins. But if the people at home cannot watch it till 3 o'clock on like a channel that they've got to search half an hour for, then it's not going to build these prospects into what they should be.
Yep. No, absolutely. Sorry,
pretty much. They've done that with Aaron Pico. He was like, at one point, he was known as being the number one prospect in the sport. He's kind of wrestling credentials. He's a World Cup winner of wrestling. He's Golden Gloves boxing champion. He could have went to the Olympics on either sport. And there was talk of this kid for 16 coming out of AKA. This kid's going to be like he's going to surpass everything that's been done before. And then he signed, I don't even think he had a pro fight. He went straight to Bellator, and his record's like 5-3 or something. Just they've not matched him well.
No.
They buried him on undercards. They put him in ridiculous cards. And they've went and wrecked a guy who, it reminds me a lot of the new what Brave doing with Mohamed Mokayev. You've got this guy who's like an uber prospect, and they've destroyed the guy's career, and he's like 23 years old or 24 years old. They've done such a good job kind of building James Gallagher, for relatively unknown to like, he's one of their biggest stars, and they get criticised for the way they handle Page, just holding him on to mismatched fights for far too long. It's just like their decision making. It's like they need somebody in there, like a matchmaker, who's not just thinking about the next show, who's thinking a year or two down the line, and also thinking about who is their brightest kind of prospects and what's the best way to bring them through, and kind of keep them away from each other to a certain extent until it makes sense to put them together. But it just seems like they've got they're drawing lotteries for who they're fighting. They've got their favourites. Yeah. They'll get these fights. They'll get better spot. Look at Paul Redmond. They'll get on main cards in Dublin. It's absolutely ridiculous. And then Charlie Leary, or who was it we were talking about last time, had lost or who'd won and never get put in the main card, and somebody who'd get beat was on the main card.
Oh, fuck.
Just stuff like that.
Aye, they've done it a few. Do you think the biggest thing Bellator could do is actually put their hands in their pockets and do everything in their power to steal Ian Dean for Cage Warriors?
It wouldn't do them any harm.
Ian Dean's a quality matchmaker. Because that's the thing, it's like Bellator are throwing all this money about, and then you look down at Cage Warriors and say what you want about how they pay fighters, but Cage Warriors, they put a good show on, man. They put their show compared to Bellator. Look, there's no twice about it. Cage Warriors is better to watch, man. The fights are amazing. Bellator might throw a bit more money at fighters and that tempts them away, but it just seems like Cage Warriors are as close to the UFC as any other promotion is. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you look bout for bout, Cage Warriors is a trilogy against the 3 Milan shows. There's no argument in that matchmaking of which shows, in terms of matchmaking competitive fights, like Ian Dean is one of the best matchmakers in the game, I think.
Yeah.
Aye, I think absolutely. But just we'll sort of just one last subject I want to jump on before we wrap up. So obviously, a lot of who's the pound for pound best, a lot of GOAT talk, all this is going on. Do any feel like maybe GSP's not getting quite the mention he should be in this GOAT talk? Because James, you were talking about earlier about going through divisions and doing it. John Jones has obviously done it, but let's be honest, there's a big asterisk attached to him when you introduce PEDs. I mean, I think that almost removes you from the conversation, but GSP went through, at the time, a very, very stacked welterweight division. What do you think about this talk now?
You want to go first, Jake?
Yeah, go. I think recency bias is playing a lot in it. Like you mentioned before, there's thousands upon thousands of eyes that have really just came to this sport, let's say, in the last 6-7 years. The likes of these people probably won't remember the sort of talent the likes of GSP was.
Yeah.
The likes Anderson Silva was, pre that Stephan Bonnar fight. Oh, well, pre-Stephan Bonnar result, if you like.
Yeah.
I think a lot of that is playing a factor in this sort of discussion. And John Jones or Khabib, yeah, of course, if PEDs played a massive part potentially in John Jones's career, but that's where that asterisk is. You'll never actually know just how good he was because of what people merit to the PEDs. I think it's going to be one of those that you could put like 20 MMA fans in a room and not two of them will agree on who they think the best fighter and the pound for pound or the GOAT is.
Aye. And James, your thoughts on the whole situation?
So I'll separate the two of them. So I'll have pound for pound for me is somebody who's active right now.
Yeah.
And then the GOAT's obviously through the history of the sport. So I have Khabib as pound for pound the best fighter in the sport right now. Even before Gaethje, I'd have probably had that. The GOAT thing, it's a stupid argument. It's the same as when you argue about it in boxing. But for me, when I think about it, that if you're busted for drugs, you're out the equation straight away. Like you're not even getting an asterisk. You're just not getting in. I think DC mentioned something along the lines of Barry Bonds not being in the Baseball Hall of Fame and stuff for the same reason. So if they'd done that, and maybe even the UFC came out and said it might even discourage some of these guys for taking performance enhancing drugs. I know USADA at one point were talking about how the test, the guys making the drugs are ahead of the testers, so the retrospective testing, saying that they could take a blood sample now and then find something in 5 years because they've not got a test for that substance right now, and then going back and taking money back, win bonuses back for fights, and changing guys' records because they've won a fight on drugs, so declaring that no contest or whatever. So it'd be similar to that. If they fail, they're out the equation for me, and that's a personal reason, because I know for a fact my guys have competed against guys who have took it, and all of my guys are clean. So that wrecks it straight away. The level of competition has to be a factor. So for me, it has to be GSP. He wiped the division out. I was talking to a guy the other day, and Khabib had 4 fights against top 15 ranked opponents. So he had Gaethje, Alaquinta, Barboza, and I can't remember who the other one is, but he never had any of the 4 guys at the top 15 he'd fought against, and Conor, sorry. Whereas GSP had some 12. Many of them were champions before they went on to be champions. Khabib had the belt. I think he won his belt 2018, whereas GSP went some ridiculous 2,450 days or something as champion. So that's like a 7-year run, I think, in that division. So it has to be him, but then Demetrius Johnson has to get factored in.
Yep.
Aldo has to get factored in, and stuff like that. But it's one of those, you can never make the guys fight each other, so it's pointless. It's like, who's going to win a fight out of Superman and Batman type of shit? I
think Batman won that fight. Did you know?
Probably.
No, you're right. And the other thing is, you've got to account for the fact the sport evolves, and you can't compare the best 20 years ago to the best now. There is no comparison. The sport has improved, and guys are significantly better than back then. Just one last. Sorry,
the only good thing about that has come out of it is we'll hopefully never get to see Khabib versus GSP, because it would absolutely go through him. It wouldn't be competitive at all right now. GSP didn't look great against Bisping, who's got one leg and one eye, and he struggled with intestinal stuff. And nobody wants to see that fight, man. Khabib would absolutely demolish him.
I agree, man. With GSP, I think he's done everything he needs to do in the sport, man. He's done what he needs to do. He's left on top, although the Hendricks fight was a bit ropey. I think that's GSP that has got he doesn't need to come back. He doesn't need to come back. But I think we'll wrap up on that. Jake, thanks for jumping on the show. Obviously, you've got your own podcast, Fight and Talk, so tune in there. And I see you. What's this way? A wee bit of the modelling you're doing? I've seen you pulling pulling the pouting and all that. And what's happening here, mate? Are you wearing nail polish and that as well now?
It's just a Geordie thing, mate, isn't it? It's pretty requisite.
Have you got veneers yet? Let me see.
No, not yet. No. Next episode.
So next time you're on the show, you'll have veneers and fake tan.
That's it, aye.
Aye, fake tan. Just need to get a missus with fake tits and all that, and you'll be laughing. But listen, Jake, thanks for jumping on and chatting to us tonight. So obviously that we'll wrap up on that, guys. Thanks very much.
Thank you, mate.
Cheers, man.
Right, catch you later, man.
See you later.